Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
room, though.
You gotta be exact. Good evening. Welcome to the October 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Town of Exeter Budget Recommendations Committee. Welcome, everyone, to the official start of a new budget season. We'll spend the next couple of months reviewing the budget and CIP items and hopefully come up with something we can be happy and proud of to send to the Select Board for their review. We're going to be talking about the preliminary budget that has been handed out. I think hopefully most of you have been able to pick up a notebook. I, of course, did not. So if any of you don't have one, we can either share or somehow get you one. And then Russ will be presenting the budget. As I mentioned in the email, I'd like to sort of go through that A to Z with no interruptions so that we can get a full sort of a continuous scope of what we're looking at. And then, again, if you have circle back questions, we can address those hopefully in an orderly fashion. So we'll start off by doing introductions. I'm Bob Kelly, the chair of the committee and chair of the Water and Sewer and General DPW Subcommittee. Chris?
Hello, Christine Suter. I guess, am I still vice chair from last year?
We voted you in.
Oh, we did? I remember. Okay, so I'm vice chair. And I'm a subcommittee chair of Parks and Rec, Library, and Human Services.
Liz Canada, VP at Columbus Ave. I am on the Parks and Rec, Library, and Human Services Subcommittee as well.
David Kovar. I always feel like I have to sell my address when I'm speaking in here, so 38 Crossroad and Public Safety. Or Fire and Police, however you want to call it.
Evening, everyone. Corey Stevens, Finance Director.
Good evening, Melissa Roy, Assistant Town Manager.
Good evening, Russ Dean, Town Manager.
Hi, Anthony Zwan, 7 Marlborough Street, serving on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee.
Yep, Andrew Elliott, Washington Street, on the DPW General.
Judy Rowan, Prentice Way, Police and Fire Subcommittee Chair.
Don Clodia, Prentice Way, Fire and Police.
Fran Hall, Prentice Way, I'll be on Water and Sewer.
Chris Zigmont, Crestview Drive, and I'm on the General Government Sub.
Anna Grazier, Warren Avenue, and I am also on the General Government Subcommittee.
Amanda Kelly, Prospect Street, and I'm a glutton for punishment, so both DPW committees and general government.
Thank you, everyone. And off mic tonight, we have Nico Papakatsidis, the chair of the Select Board, Nancy Belanger, and Dan Chartrand, also on the Select Board. Thank you for joining us. So we'll, without further ado, we'll get right into the preliminary budget. Russell, if you'd sort of walk us through things.
Sure thing. So the FY25 budget starts with budget notes. As you can see, the wages up. First of all, everybody should have a handout. If you don't, you can grab one over there and should be able to follow along with everything. The budget notes start with wages. The FY25 reclassification implementation for non-union personnel. Per the Keegan and Associates Management Report, the town had a report commissioned by Keegan and Associates in 2024, and that resulted in changes in wages, and some of those have been implemented into the 2025 budget, and we can talk about that some more. Non-union wages are forecast to increase in July of 25 with a 3% step and a 2% COLA adjustment. So that is the non-union group. For police, fire, and public works, those contracts are all currently being negotiated. So that would be part of the FY25 town warrant. And these would appear as separate warrant articles on the 2025 town warrant. So those are subject to collective bargaining and being worked on right now. On benefits, health insurance, the increase is budgeted at 10%. FY24, just as a point of reference, was an increase of 10%. And the final insurance numbers are due from Health Trust October 8th, 2024. The Finance and Personnel Committee, of which I am the chair of that committee, actually, met last week to discuss preliminary rates. And then there was a public hearing held on Thursday of last week to describe more of the rate descriptions, but not the actual rates themselves. So those go to the Board of Directors of Health Trust, and that'll happen next Tuesday. And the board will take a final vote on the rates, and then we will get our individual rating as a town. So we've budgeted 10% right now, but there's a likelihood that it could be, it's a likelihood it could be right around 10%, or it could be a little bit more than that, hopefully not too much more than that. That's what we're looking at the moment. On the expense side, significant increases in blue bag expenses. We've caught up to our blue bag allotment, $42,000 increase. Then paving, $150,000 has been added to the budget, but we are spending the same amount on paving as we did in the prior year, $700,000. It's just that $150,000 is coming from a different bucket. In FY24, we funded $150,000 from road aid, and in FY25 we'll be funding $150,000 out of the general fund. And then solid waste collection is up $112,180, and that's about a 9.5% increase on the contract, which includes a CPI inflator, but plus volume. So that's why that increase is what it is. And then the general fund has two new positions. One is a human resources director, full-time, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the part-time senior coordinator. The senior coordinator would be shared between the town, the Exeter Hospital grant, and the Parks and Rec revolving fund. So that's a part-time position that's being proposed through Parks and Rec for the FY25 year. So the total preliminary budget is $23,887,679. That's $1,026,817 over FY24. As we know, the town operating budget funds all town departments, and police, fire, and DPW make up about 70% of that general fund budget. So that has been very steady and hasn't changed over several years. The current town tax rate is $6.23 a thousand, and we'll set the new rate in November of '24. The town operations tax rate represents about 22.6 of the total tax rate of $26.78. So that is actually on your tax bill. The town share represents about 22.6%. We don't include veterans credits or overlay in that number. Those are additional amounts that are part of the town tax rate but are not part of the operations tax rate. The water and sewer funds have their own budget. The water sewer rates are set by the select board after a recommendation from the water sewer committee. And then, as we've all been learning and understanding, 2024 is a property revaluation year. So the final values are going to be discussed with the select board on October 15th, 2024. And the 2024 property tax rate is expected to decrease as a result of revaluation. You probably all saw the article in the Seacoast Online about Portsmouth's tax rate dropping as a result of their revaluation. We can't say how much it will drop at this point, but it's likely to drop quite significantly. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. Says no.
We have a rule.
Bob told me.
We have a rule.
We have a rule. Very good. All right, so the preliminary budget overview continued. In the FY25 budget, we've continued to focus on recruitment and retention. Certainly, we've had quite a few vacancies in the town. We're working to fill those, and we're having better luck as of late filling those, and especially in the Public Works Department, we've been making progress, which is really great to see. But we are focused on recruitment and retention in this budget for sure. Wage and benefit costs, they're continuing to rise. That is no secret to anybody due to inflation and other factors. We do have the implementation of the management report that we talked about earlier. And again, that is online if people are interested in reading it. It's under the select board header, and you can read through that. And it's an organizational management study that talks about just changes in our general organizational structure. Before that study came out, we were a very flat organization with a lot of people reporting directly to the town manager. And now with the assistant town manager and the finance director, we're forming more of an executive team, a 3-person approach to the overall management of the town. So the assistant town manager is taking on different departments like Parks and Recreation, Communications, Welfare, as an example, and Human Resources, as an example. And the finance director is taking on assessing, tax, and IT. So they're obviously taking on more responsibilities, so that's reflected in this budget as well. The final year of ARPA authorizations, this is the last year to commit those monies, so that you'll see those be committed by the end of 2024, and then the spend is supposed to happen in 2025 and 26. So we have approximately $68,000 left, or $60,000 left in ARPA funds to be spent, and we need to commit those before the end of the year. So we're working on making a list of recommendations to the select board that we can carry through to them. Solid waste disposal costs are rising, I mentioned that, and then the paving, again, restored to $700,000 in the general fund budget for FY '25. So as we get into the departments, the general government department, as you can see here with the majority of our general government operations, the start here is with the total budget. It's an increase of $103,410, or 6.71% over FY '24. The select board budget is actually 0.03% under the FY '24 budget, so that's a small decrease. The town manager budget is an increase of 41.22%, and that is due to the fact that the assistant town manager position is now fully allocated to the town manager budget. Before that was under the human resources header, and so that's been moved over to the town manager budget. The human resources budget is carrying the new position, the new proposal for the human resources director, and it's a reduction of 3.04% under the FY '24 budget. We did budget, obviously, funds that we would expect to have to pay for that position, and that is driving the number there. Transportation is $1, so there's no increase from the '24 budget on that. The legal budget is staying at $100,000, so there's no increase from the '24 budget on that. Information technology is up 9.7% over FY '24. The major driver there is there is a contracted services that computer network support that has been helping out police and fire. That is actually coming over to IT and being put into their budget, and that is driving that allocation percentage increase. Then media communications, that's Bob Kowacki and his group. That budget is up 5.66% over FY '24, and that's just basic wages and benefits. Trustees of trust funds, that's a small budget with no increase to it. The town moderator budget is down. That decrease is due to fewer elections in FY '25. There will only be one instead of 4 that we're having this year. And the town clerk budget is actually down quite a bit. The decrease is 11.54%, or $53,000. That's a big number, and that is due to staff turnover in the department. We've had 2 vacancies that have been filled, and then different change in benefit plans that go with that. So that's why that budget is what it is. The elections registration budget is $21,233. There's 1 election in '25, as we talked about, compared to 4 in FY '24. So that budget reduction is 14.28% under FY '24. We'll go over to finance now. The finance department includes treasurer, tax collection, and assessing. From a budgetary standpoint, we haven't folded IT into this yet, but we will in subsequent years down the road. Finance, the FY '25 budget is an increase of $23,388, or 6.32%. The major changes there are a reduction in audit fees and a reduction in contracted services, but there's also wage and benefit changes that are increasing the budget, and then an increase in bank fees. And we have put in for an update to the town's bond rating. Right now, we're an A2 bond rating, and we are looking to get the town reassessed as part of that to get a new bond rating. So we've budgeted $4,500 to do that. And again, having a good bond rating means lower interest rates when you're borrowing, so it's always good to keep your bond rating current. And we feel like the town's financial position is strong right now, and it's a good time to go out and do that. The valuation changes actually help with the bond rating as well. The fact that values are up actually helps that process out considerably. The treasurer budget is a decrease of $147, or 1.52%. That's a small stipend that's paid to the town treasurer. And the tax collection budget is an increase of 8.5%. That budget is the deputy tax collector and the collection specialist down in the tax office. And we just hired a new deputy tax collector. She's coming from Hampton. So we managed to, yeah. Thank you.
The door goes both ways.
The door goes both ways.
We did not poach.
So, no, not poach. But we're fortunate enough to get a new deputy tax collector from Hampton, and she was the tax collector in Hampton. Her name is Donna Bennett, and she is actually a graduate of Exeter High School. And,
Nice.
so she comes with EHS pedigree. And so we welcomed her on September 30th, and she'll do a great job for us, and we're glad she's here. So the budget there is up 8.5%. You can see the expense increases. Most of them have to do with postage and tax billing services. And on the expense side, again, postage is going up, tax billing services are going up. A lot of our contracted services are in that same situation. Assessing, the budget is a decrease, $2,587 or 0.9%. The changes there were wage increases of 5.1% and the budget increase in the MRI contract of $4,300 for FY25. But there's also a reduction in the revaluation line, which we used in FY24 to resolve the Riverwoods valuation issue that we had ongoing with them. We did use that money, and now we can cancel that out of the FY25 budget. Planning, building, economic development, and land use boards. So the planning budget, wage increases are up $14,235, and general expense increases there are $828 or 2.3%. The total budget is up 5.68% over the FY24 budget. Again, mainly wages and benefits. The expense lines are fairly level. The economic development budget is up 3.36%. Again, wage increases there. General expenses actually decreased by 10.2%. So that's a small expense budget as it is. Most of that budget is wages and benefits. Inspections and code, that overall budget decrease is 0.13%, and that's due to contracted services being reduced from $15,000 to $5,000 in the FY25 budget. So we did talk to the code enforcement officer about this. This is one where we had advertised for an electrical inspector for several years. We weren't able to get anybody for the position, so we went to contracted services last year. Still really no luck as far as that goes, so we wanted to put a placeholder in there in case something materialized, so we stuck with $5,000.
There's a part-time
And I want to deviate a little bit here and say that
There's a part-time job.
a lot of the decision-making that we're making are part of the team of Corey and Melissa and I meeting during the budget process and thinning out where we think we can thin out the budgets. And in this budget, overall, coming before you, we have already taken out or reallocated about $210,000 in spending. So that was part of that reduction of the $210,000. $10,000 is part of it right here. So to get to that 4.49%, we've taken out $210,000 already. Then land use budgets, those are also very small budgets. Some are decreased, some are increased. The ZBA is down. The Historic District Commission is down. The Conservation Commission is a small increase, and the Heritage Commission is a small increase. And then on renewable energy expense, we have adopted that line item. We adopted it several years ago. We funded it at $1 in case there's something that comes along that requires us to spend against that line, and we haven't had any yet, but that is $1. So we'll go over to police. The police budget is an increase of $132,043. That's 3.34% over FY24. Personnel, 29 full-time, 2 part-time, broken into 3 divisions. The FY25 budget changes, they include $70,000 in full-time wage increases, so that's a good chunk of that amount, wages and benefits. If you look at benefits, $52,000 in changes. Again, that's due to health changes and retirement increases. So the police department, the employees on the force that are part of the sworn personnel are part of the Group 2 retirement system, which means that they're not eligible for Social Security. So there's a percentage of payroll that goes to fund their retirement, and that is increasing, so that's what that budget line is. Then increases in wage categories, including an increase of shift differential. There's an overtime increase of $10,000, coverage overtime, and then canine overtime with our new Comfort Dog Maple, $6,815. And that's offset by donations as well. So there's a revenue component to that goes to offset that. Expense decreases include community relations, computer maintenance service contract that's moved to the IT budget. We talked about that. And then expense increases including dry cleaning, education and training, uniforms, and then overall general expenses are actually decreased by $16,760. Again, some of that is shifting things around, but overall there is a decrease. So that's police. Go to fire. That budget right now is actually a decrease, $28,784 or 0.68% under FY24. This budget funds 33 full-time positions. We run right now 7 firefighters per shift at full strength, 28 positions total. The ranks include captains and lieutenants. I will tell you that this budget anticipates running at 6 personnel. That is something the new chief has been working on with us internally as a matter of course, and it is due to activity in the fire department. And even with that change to 6, the budget is staying relatively constant and is actually a decrease. But again, this budget will change once the health insurance numbers are known because they'll kick into the budget and give us a new percentage. But that is the anticipated shift strength that is being sought by the department to operate at this point. The FY budget 25 budget changes include wage increases of $40,397. That's full-time wages, an increase of $5,193 in part-time wages, and that is for the emergency management director part-time position at 12 months. For those of you who were here last year, Chief Wilking retired. He came back and came on as an EMD for us, and we split that off from the fire chief position, and so that position is being funded for 12 months in the FY25 budget. FY25 benefits decrease is 2.6%, again, due to plan changes. And then general expenses are decreased by $51,483. There are a couple of main reasons for that. One is the computer contract that we talked about being moved over to IT. That's a reduction of $17,020. And then there's a one-time reduction in protective equipment. The select board supported outfitting the department with PFAS combatant gear, PFAS-free gear, and that was ARPA funded in FY24, so the fire chief worked with us and reduced that budget accordingly. It's a one-time reduction, but it is a significant reduction of $33,000 for that line for the year. So keep that in mind as you're going through the process this year. Then we go to dispatch. The dispatch budget is actually a decrease of 2.21%, and that is, there are increases in the wages in that department, but there are changes in benefits that are reducing the overall budget, and you can see the changes in wages there and the benefits there. Wages are up 7.96%. The overall, I'm sorry, that was health. The dispatch wages are increased by 6.9%. and the dispatch benefits are down 17.3%. Then the health benefit changes, the full-time wages increases 5.1%, and the payroll tax benefits increases 3%. The health budget is overall increased by $6,197, and that includes education and training for the health officer, which we're helping her obtain her degree right now, so that's why that budget is increased. All right, so we're over to Public Works, General Fund. Administration, engineering, highway, snow removal, solid waste, streetlights, and stormwater. The administration engineering budget is up 2.63% over FY24. Those are mainly wage increases, offset by some benefit decreases, and then overall general expenses have decreased 1.2% under FY24. The highway FY25 budget You can see there it's an increase of 7.32%, and mainly that is due to the capital outlay budget that has been increased from $550,000 to $700,000 in the paving area. So that's actually making up the lion's share of the increase in the highway budget. On snow removal, there's a decrease of $25,185, or 8%. The reason for that is we have recommended that we appropriate more into the snow and ice deficit fund through the fund balance, and then lower the snow and ice budget for the year. And if we do need additional funding through that mechanism, through the snow and ice deficit fund, we can then pull it out of there. So we have, it's probably a good opportunity to talk about our fund balance situation is healthy at the moment. We have approximately, it's a raw number, but $5.2 million in fund balance. So we felt that with that level of fund balance, we could afford to take $25,000 from fund balance, pocket it into the snow and ice deficit fund, and then use that to cover any deficits. Solid waste budget we talked about before. That is up overall 10.89%. And the budget changes include the increase in contracted services, 9.4%, and then part-time wages are up 5.1%, and then the blue bag adjustment of $42,000, and then again, that's going to be partially recovered by blue bag sales and revenues. Streetlights budget is down 13.02%. That is a decrease of $22,000. The town has completed its purchase of the streetlights from Unitil, so we paid that down, and we no longer owe that, so we're able to reduce that by the annual payment that we were making to Unitil. So that's good news. So that is savings that will last. It should last over a number of years for the town. So good outcome there. And then stormwater is $92,360, which is no increase over the FY24 budget. Maintenance and garage. The FY25 budget is increased by $59,945. That's 4.82%. And the increase in the general maintenance budget is 7.58%. That includes wage increases, 3.6%. And then contracted services, we've actually been using a number that needed to be modified. Last year, we missed this, but this year we're picking up on it, reflecting more closely the actual costs of cleaning town buildings. That's a discussion that we've been having, a fairly robust discussion internally about how to deal with our town buildings and the change between contracted services and hiring new personnel and making recommendations going forward. But for this year, that's a budget number that needs to be established for that particular service based upon the current level of service that's being provided. Then we have the fire safety budget. That's increased by $9,000, and that's to reflect Department of Labor related cost of compliance. So that is for equipment that's needed to comply with DOL regulations. Town building budget is up $17,021, 5.61%. That includes electricity, natural gas, water sewer bills for town buildings, and building maintenance budgets for individual facilities. The maintenance projects budget, we budgeted that again at $100,000. That's a historical figure. We've used that every year, and there's no increase over the FY24 budget. The DPW garage budget is 0.7%. The wages are increased 0.7% over FY24, or I'm sorry, the whole budget is increased 0.7%. The benefits are decreased by $140 or 0.1%. The wage increases are 1%. And again, these figures do not reflect any bargaining agreements. That's why you're seeing in some of the budgets, the wages are higher because non-union personnel are budgeted for. But in some budgets, you'll see that the wage numbers are lower, and that's typically because those wages would be adjusted after a collective bargaining agreement was ratified and voted on by the voters. So that's Public Works. Going on to Welfare Human Services, there is a full year funding of a part-time position that was approved in the FY24 budget. Again, those of you who remember last year's process, remember we established a new position. part-time position for Welfare Human Services Administrator and split it off from the Senior Executive Assistant to the Town Manager, and that has worked out very well. Clarissa Coppin is our Welfare Human Services Administrator, if you haven't met her. She's doing great work for us already, and that budget includes her position for a full year of funding. And then we've also increased rent relief in the direct relief expense area, $25,600, and that's simply to meet demand. We are seeing more and more requests for rental assistance, and that's more of a policy issue that I think as the town grapples with some things, this is one of the major things that we need to think about is, you know, the direct rent relief, the impacts of some of the decisions on those who are in need, and we are seeing a definite uptick in that area. So that is why that is increased in the budget. Human Service Agency funding is down 0.42%. Seacoast B&A did not submit an application this year. That's one of the markers on the Human Services Agency funding, and that's one of the reasons it's down. And the Human Services Funding Committee has vetted the list and looked at it already and is recommending that number for funding. Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation is up 12.28%. The FY25 budget for recreation is 11.95% increase. Again, full-time wages increasing 5.1%. And I say again because there are a lot of 5.1% increases in wages. Part-time wages include the new position of senior coordinator. The cost to the general fund is listed there, $14,921, with the revolving fund and Exeter Hospital contributing to the position. And then benefits are increased $21,936 to account for a plan change, again, plan changes. So that's a theme throughout this budget too. There are some ups and some downs, but I would say more often throughout the budget you're seeing benefit plans increase due to people coming over to our health insurance. Although it's about a split. It's about a 50-50 split. It's close to that. The Parks FY25 budget is up 12.86%. You've got we have 2.4% in wage changes there. Again, doesn't include the collective bargaining agreement that could be ratified. The payroll taxes and benefits are increased by that amount to $29,479 for a health plan change, and the general expenses are up $300 or 0.3%. Other culture and recreation, this budget's been fairly constant over the years. We added $500 last year to veterans activities to support the Memorial Day Parade. This year, we're looking to add $2,000 to the Parks and Recreation side of the fireworks for an increase of $8,000 to $10,000. So that's an inflation adjustment. The fireworks are costing us more that we have every July. So that is up 5.8%. Then the library budget. The library budget is increased $73,365 or 6.19% over FY24. I will tell you that as of press time, because this is a timing issue, the trustees of the library voted on their budget on Tuesday, and we got it, so we just got it, and it's a 5% increase, so the subcommittees that are working with the library will see that, that it's actually going to be a 5% increase and not 6.19%. So it'll be a little bit of a change there. Debt service and capital, total budget you can see there, a little over $2.3 million. That's a decrease of $66,348 or 2.74%. The debt service budget overall is down $120,699 or 5.83%. And the major projects in the debt service budget include the library renovation addition, Court Street culvert, the solar array at Cross Road, 10 Hampton Road, that purchase, and the Epping Road water tank. So some major changes in the debt service budget from last year. The Great Dam Removal Bond is now retired, so that's paid for. The Rec Park Development Design Bond is retired, so that was a 5-year note that we just retired. And then the total interest decrease in debt service is $76,446, and that's just due to maturing notes on projects. So as projects get further along in their life cycle, the interest paid decreases over time. Then the vehicle lease budget is increased by $47,822, and that represents a new sidewalk tractor. I think it's number 58 that was replaced as part of our town warrant in FY24. So those payments have been added into the schedule. Benefits and taxes. Benefits and taxes, the increase is $303,109, or 57.36% over FY24. That includes the health buyout program and also the health, life, dental reserves. This is where we stockpile the health insurance, life, and dental reserves before the health trust rating comes in. So this is where that 10% budget figure comes in. And we budgeted that $277,190 to prepare us for the rating when it comes down. The unemployment budget is, you can see there, $2,364. We're a member of Primex for that. Workers' compensation, $258,394. Also a member of Primex for that. And also a member of Primex for property liability insurance, and that's $88,441. So that is the total general fund budget. And we can go back to the bottom line and talk about that when it's time for Q&A. The bond articles in the general fund, we have 4 that we're looking at right now. One is Pickpocket Dam removal, $2.1 million. That was a decision that was made earlier this year to recommend passing that along to the voters for a vote. So $2.1 million is the number that we're using for removal of Pickpocket Dam. Then the Linden Street Bridge Repair Project, which is in your CIP, that's $1.2579 million. The Linden Street Bridge was actually a project that was on the warrant a couple of years ago, but the scope changed precipitously once the engineering was done, and the project got quite a bit more expensive. And so the Department of Public Works is looking for that number. We're looking for that to properly fund that project. Then the new fuel island at the DPW complex, $575,000. That's a project that's been in, if you've been on the BRC before, you're familiar with that one, so we're bringing that forward this year. And then the street sweeper, which is going to help us with our Great Bay nitrogen reduction program permit, that's $395,000, and that would be through an SRF loan. And if it materializes, we may be eligible for some debt forgiveness on that. Then there are warrant articles for the capital improvement program and others. So there's a list here. One is the Front Pine and Linden Street project. That is akin to the roundabout that was approved a couple of years ago. The Department of Public Works did some investigating on that, and we need to upgrade some sewers in the area as well as drainage. So that article is $250,000. And we're actually recommending that, again, this is part of our internal discussion that we have about budget and funding with the team. We feel pretty strongly that we should use excess bond proceeds to pay for $100,000 on the drainage replacement. And then the sewer fund, we have excess bond proceeds as well from the Sludger Lagoon project from a few years back. And we're recommending that we use those as funding sources for that. So it would not be on the taxpayer's dime. It would be using those surpluses. Then transfer station improvements, some layout improvements, including paving at the transfer station, $100,000. The Parks Improvement Fund, which is a customary article at this point, $100,000. The ADA Capital Reserve Fund, also an annual fund, $25,000 for that. The Sportsman's Club cleanup, that's $45,000. We're under a remedial action plan from the state. They're looking to have us do more work at the Sportsman's Club site, and the latest estimates from the engineers are $45,000, and again, we can do a deeper dive into that, but that is a DES requirement, and that's why it's coming up now. The Sester Centennial Fund, which is a fund that has been discussed at the select board level, $5,000. The Succession Planning Fund, that is something that we've been talking about internally. There's a need to prepare for succession planning in the town, and with that comes some expense. And we are recommending at this point that we have some discussion about a succession plan fund That would be a non-capital reserve fund, and it would be funded at $25,000 as seed money for that particular fund. So you can see the excess bond proceeds are $100,000, the general fund $300,000, and then the sewer fund $150,000, but also excess bond proceeds from that funding source. Lease purchases, we're proposing 3 lease purchases in the budget. One is to replace the dump truck 33 that's been on the list for quite a few years. It's a 2008 dump truck that was reallocated from water sewer over to highway. So we're looking to replace that. The replacement of sidewalk tractor, that's 58, excuse me, from the prior one. That had a different number. This is $225,000, so we're looking to replace that. Again, the sidewalk tractors that we're replacing are 1991 vintage. They're older, so very, very much older. So you've seen them around town in the wintertime, so you can pick out the ones that are old versus the ones that are new. Pretty easy to pick out. So so we're looking to replace one of those. Then the Parks and Recreation ADA accessible van for $120,000. And so the combination of funding sources there are general fund taxation and the revolving fund. And the revolving fund would pick up a share of the Parks and Rec ADA accessible van at $120,000. So then we continue on with, these are fund balance articles. Fire replacement of utility 1 truck in the fire department. That's been on the list in the CIP for quite a few years, $71,355. The public EV charging facility initiative, that's been put forward through Kristen Murphy and the Sustainability Committee at $120,000, and I will point out that there may be some grant money available for that, so that, even though it says $120,000, we may offset that with grant funds if they materialize. The styrofoam recycling unit, which is modeled after a program in Guilford, New Hampshire, they have a styrofoam recycling unit there. That's $80,000. We'd be looking to put that into play at the transfer station. The Rains Barn fire alarm unit for $12,815. Again, that's to install a fire alarm in Rains Barn, pretty self-explanatory. And then the snow and ice deficit fund, customary article, $75,000 is what we're recommending instead of the $50 that we've been putting in. Again, the $25,000 to come from fund balance. And the sick leave trust fund, a customary article, that's $100,000. So the total there, $459,170. And again, as we've been looking over the budgets certainly in the last several years, but with the team and in the last few, we've kept that level of spending from fund balance at about $500,000. And so that's what we're looking to do again this year, is fit into that bucket. So again, it's all part of a system where you spend just enough from fund balance, and so you keep your fund balance, part of it to lower the tax rate, and then you have to keep some on hand to allow for the GFOA recommended amount between 5 and 17% of general fund appropriations. So we try to stay in that $5 million mark at any given time to be able to continue to cycle through the budgets with the different buckets funding the different projects. So total general fund appropriations as proposed for FY25, $23,887,069 for the budget. The warrant article piece, $409,250. Total preliminary appropriations, $24,296,929. FY24 general fund appropriations are $22,985,862. So the delta there is $1,311,067. And the appropriations percentage increase year over year is 5.7%. And looking at the tax impact that is calculated on that, it's estimated that it would be around, it would be 37 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. So that's the overall budgetary impact. Okay? Okay. All right. We're on to water sewer.
Rolling right along.
All right. Water sewer. So the water fund budget is a decrease, $445,576, or 8.98% under FY24. The administration budget is increased 7.28%, and the billing is increased 1.82%. Distribution is down 0.97%. The treatment budget is up 10.84%. Then the debt service budget is down 12.96% due to some debt retirements. And then the capital outlay budget is the major driver on the water budget. It's down 64.09%. That is due to we have a repair contract, a replacement contract for clarifiers and media replacement. And that was a front-loaded contract where we paid quite a bit more in the first few years of the contract, and now we're paying considerably less in the last two. So that's why that's down so much. Then on the sewer budget, the increase there is $625,033, or 8.34%. And the administration, like water, is up close to the same percentage, 7.33%. That is, again, that budget carries all the allocations from the general fund, including the Public Works Department and general administration. The billing budget is up 1.85% over FY24. The collections budget is up 3.75%, and the treatment budget is up 3.19%. Debt service is up 11.51%. Again, that's the major budget driver with sewer. We all know about the Siphons project, and the Siphons project debt is coming online in FY25, so that's why that number is what it is. And then the capital outlay budget is an increase of $18,030, or 10.55% over the FY24 budget. Bond issues for the water sewer funds, groundwater development, obviously a big initiative we have going on at the moment, and we're working on the site off Drinkwater Road. We're working with PEA on that. We have an option agreement, and we are doing well testing as we speak, and we'll be continuing to work on that, but that's a $6.8 million initiative that hopefully it will bear fruit and add to our water resources, which we certainly need at this point. So that is a project that is on deck for FY25 for the warrant. Then the Clemson Pond Cleaning and Inspection Project, that is also in the CIP. That has to do with the siphons at Clemson Pond and growth that needs to be dealt with there. That's a $500,000 project, and we're proposing that be funded from excess bond proceeds from the Lagoon Sludge Project. So that, again, that would not hit sewer rates. It would be funded from current proceeds. The wastewater effluent flume repair, that's a $245,000 project, and that is also scheduled to be funded from the Lagoon Sludge Project excess bond proceeds. So again, that would not hit the sewer rate. That would come from excess bond proceeds that are in hand. And then the front Linden Pine sewer and drainage replacement for $150,000. We talked about that. That relates back to that warrant article. That was $250,000 overall. And we would again recommend that excess bond proceeds be used to pay for that. So then the FY25 revolving funds, there are 3 funds. They're non-appropriated, so they don't come through the Budget Recommendations Committee, but there is a cable TV access fund, and for this year we're proposing $233,300 in funding for that. That handles all EXTV's activities. The EMS fund, $793,600 in projected revenue there. The rec revolving fund, and again, EMS fund goes to pay for EMS operations, and we take 95% of that fund balance every year and bring it back into the general fund, whatever the surplus is, and that goes to offset firefighter wages and benefits. So of that 793, whatever's left over after expenses, 95% of that figure we bring back to the general fund. And then the recreation revolving fund, $771,000 in projected revenues. So 3 pretty robust funds that are non-appropriated funds and do not go to town meeting. All right, and that's the slideshow. So that's the
Excellent.
So that's the package. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to present.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I'll start off by saying thank you to you as well as the executive team. Melissa and Corey, thanks for helping Russ and putting this all together. This is great. And the second thing is, I love this format. This is great.
Oh, good.
This is very easy to follow, and good for note-taking, and a little bit better than the written narrative, in my opinion. So hopefully it works for everybody.
And again, I can't say enough about the preliminary process that goes into this budget. When we get the numbers in August, we grind through these numbers in a very intense manner with our department. So it is good that I know that we spend a lot of time meeting and talking about how we want to present the budget and what it looks like. So appreciate the feedback and wish you the best, and we'll be participating with you as we go, I'm sure.
Excellent. Yeah, I guess I'd like to circle back with any questions before we get into a review of the where we are on the FY24 budget. So hopefully, if you do have questions, you were sort of jotting them down appropriately on the nice little handout, so we can be relatively linear on this. So we'll circle back to page 1 and just go down slide by slide. If people have specific questions, we'll go that route. So Ms. Rowan, you have something on page 1, I'm assuming?
I do.
Excellent.
Just wondering how it works with the contract negotiations, the salaries on the various departments that are engaged in negotiations now. We will not get the final figures on those. It has to be approved by the town. I mean, by the voters, correct?
That's
So how
correct.
does it get worked into the final budget?
So what happens is we will present presuming that we achieve contract ratification with our 3 unions, our 3 bargaining units, we'll present those as separate articles on the town warrant, and then those amounts that are part of that vote are then incorporated into the department budgets for that year and the following year. So that's how that works.
Okay, so when we look at the current budgets, we have to keep in mind that they may well be adjusted up considerably depending on the negotiations.
Depending on the negotiations, that is true.
Okay, thank you.
I would say one thing to keep in mind is that the police department does include some increases because they have a 4th year of their contract. So the major changes are going to happen in DPW and fire. So potentially half the increase could already be in police. Would you agree, Russ?
Yeah, we have a unique situation with police where we have reopened the contract with the police bargaining unit, and that's based upon some very good reasoning to do that. We certainly are. This goes back to what we've been talking about with being competitive with wages and benefits, and we have had a lot of challenges being able to recruit and retain both, especially dispatchers in that particular area. And so we're having to look at wage ranges and making some adjustments there. And but Melissa's absolutely correct in that there is a step increase in the budget for the police. That is part of that budget, even though we're in bargaining with them right now.
If you said it before, I missed it. What do we have timing on how all of that comes together? Like, when would you guys be getting numbers to be able to then give to us? Is that after our process, or?
It is after your process. It's not, the bargaining, we don't have those numbers pinned down until January. So we'll be
Would it be before the hearings with the select board?
So I'll qualify that to some degree by saying if we reached a settlement before January, then we could put together the warrant article prior to that and present it, but that would not be typical. Typically, we do go all the way to January. The bargaining process, just the way it works, is that we meet and meet and meet, and it typically takes that amount of time to be able to get something done.
And presumably, the current budget doesn't have estimates on where things are. They're based on where we are right now.
Current budget is based on where we are right now. Right.
Thank you.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
I've got a related question, Mr. Chair.
And as do I, but you can go first.
But it's on a different slide, so I'm out of order, but it's related to the topic that we're on, if that's okay.
Go for it.
This just on, you made mention on page 5, that the Chief Paisan has recommended dropping to 6 firefighters per shift versus 7. And I'm just, as a homeowner and a citizen in town, as I watch the growth around town and the increase of, multiple multifamily housing units and things like that, it's a head scratcher to me why we'd be looking at a reduction per shift versus maintaining or increasing per shift.
So if I misspoke, I apologize. We are staying at 7 per shift. This would be a 6-person staffing at all times.
It used to be 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is
Our
actually
current-
increased.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our current contract allows us, let's say someone goes on vacation or is out sick, it allows us to not backfill as long as we don't go under 5.
Okay.
And there's a discussion happening right now that may be straining the department and that we'd like to consider not dropping below 6. So we would call.
Understood.
We would call someone back or have them come in for OT.
Great. I misunderstood. Thank you.
It's okay.
It is, the budget, as I pointed out during the presentation, the budget as presented by the fire department anticipates 6 people at all times. So, and as you do your subcommittee work, you can certainly talk with the fire chief about that as well. But that's
Thanks for the clarification. Makes
that's
sense.
the funding level that is anticipated in this budget.
We met with the chief several times on this. So as we understand it, so he worked incredibly hard because he believes in the model and wouldn't present it to the executive team if he didn't feel that way. He believes that he can work 6 with the current numbers. The net increase is around $13,000 in overtime when you take out the fact that he won't have to call as many people back if he's able to stay at a number. And you also have to ask, how many times will they actually get down to that 6 versus 5? So it's not, it's a very nuanced conversation, but it's one worth having with him, and I think you'll gain a lot from it.
Cool.
Yeah, in order to get to that, you have to go through literally you have to go through every shift and look at every shift and look at who's on and who's off and that sort of thing to calculate the predictability of 6 people at a time.
First slide?
Yes.
Go.
First slide.
I'm going to get my slides.
Contracts.
Yes.
Will that be subject, but will that be part of the subject topic in the contract? Is that baked into that? Or is that separate?
This
So-
6-person minimum?
Number of personnel?
I would answer that by saying it could be part of that discussion, but it doesn't have to be.
And these contracts, I guess, I'm trying to understand the process part of it. 'Cause
So am I.
We're going to not chop on this, obviously.
Right.
And the voters are going to vote on it.
Right.
And then I guess by virtue of the voters voting on it, it gets baked into the budget.
For next
But-
year, yeah.
But I wonder whether the voters are going to understand that and realize that.
Well, there's a step in there that you're missing, and that's the select board, because they rely quite heavily on us, scrubbing things. They will get the information in January, but it will be beyond our time.
Yeah.
So we won't be able to weigh in on it, and then it'll go to, that's, I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, I think you can weigh in on the concept once you talk to the fire chief and you go through subcommittee and hear what they have to say. I don't think that would be out of line.
Right. The concept is, I think we all agree with the concept. The worry is that the increases are 10%, and we haven't had an opportunity to weigh that in with some of the other items that might be a 50-50. And if we knew now what we will know then, maybe our answers would be different.
Yeah, and I think
it's just an uncomfortable position that we've been put in.
I think the question came up too, just briefly, about the contract versus the budget, and they are two distinct things for sure. So it doesn't, if we are, I'm not going to use the word staffing, but if we're, I just did. So if we're staffing to 6, if we are running 6 at any given time, that does not necessarily have to be a contractual item.
Oh, yeah, I'm not even talking about the specificity of the fire department. I'm talking about overall, the 3 contracts and what, the select board, again, we have nothing to do with labor, but we have the number out there and we balance that against other expenses to try to come up with something reasonable. So we're 4.5% now. It might end up being way over 5, and we could account for that maybe, in the next few months. So, and then I guess the follow-up part of that is, what if these warrant articles are voted down?
Yeah.
Then if warrant articles are voted down for collective bargaining agreements, then the contracts revert to the current contract.
So it's like a default budget, effectively.
Essentially, yes.
A portion of a default budget.
Essentially, yes.
And Russ, this has been the same timeline anytime we've done union negotiations. That's never changed.
Right. It's always been the
It's
same.
always, just
That is true.
so you don't think we changed any of the timing or anything. This is.
I know, it's just that I'm paying attention more now.
Well, I can't help you on that, Bob.
I can be honest.
And again,
4 years ago,
we could.
It takes years for
I
us to
wasn't
really
sure.
understand the budget process.
Exactly, it does take a long time.
Yeah.
That's I described the statutory timeline. It doesn't prohibit us from reaching agreement prior to January, the second Tuesday in January. But again, history as a guide, it typically takes the entire process before we have ratified agreements.
Okay.
David has a question, and I have a question.
Have voters ever voted down those warrant articles that affected those contracts?
Certainly not since, I've been town manager since 2005. We have not had an agreement voted down.
Okay, because I could imagine that if they did get voted down, it would possibly significantly affect retention, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's been, without going into too much detail, that is a topic that we're having active discussions about.
Okay, thank you.
Is retention.
Tom?
Yeah, and then just the other thing that maybe because I'm finally paying attention, what that strikes me is that there are 3 contracts at the same time. Is that, I mean, obviously that has a pretty significant budgetary impact. Is that always the case, or is that just a bad convergence of the timing of these contracts?
I would say typically that we have 2 open. We've had several years where we've had 2 contracts on the warrant, but having 3 in one
That's
year
tough.
is more of an anomaly.
I think that's why it catches our eyes, at least subconsciously, and I think we'll have to probably keep that in mind when we do our deliberations.
Well, the other thing that catches our eyes is that typically the budget goes up 2 or 3%. In the last couple of years, we've been in the 4 to 5% range,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit more, the stakes are a little higher.
Yeah.
Anything else on slide 1 by anyone? Going forward, I have nothing on the next few, if anyone does. I had some comments on, actually, yeah, so 5, 6, 7, 8.
You're going pretty fast.
Yeah, I'm asking if
Delightfully
anybody
so.
has.
Delightfully
Yeah,
so.
just
Yeah.
throw it out there.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Russ, slide number 2, sorry, page number 2, slide number 3, recruitment and retention. If I picked up on it correctly, we're looking at increasing positions, 2 positions, one full-time and 1 part-time, correct?
Right.
Overall for this year.
True.
But I guess last year I remember seeing a slide, maybe I'm wrong, but about how many open positions, like how many employees do we have total and how many open positions do we have? If you could give us that information, that would be just
We
great.
can get that for you, yep.
It's on the website.
Not necessarily right now, but I'd love to see that.
Well, I think we can get that during the subcommittee.
Yeah, exactly.
review.
And
So,
I
I
can
remember
format
seeing that
it
somewhere
just
in
so
the
you can
process.
see
Yeah,
it
that'd
in
be great.
a
Thank
nice
you.
single page.
Yeah.
Another question?
Judy?
On the bond rating, Russ, you said it's currently A2, and you're looking to upgrade that, so you'll go, for those with baseball interest, so you go from AA to AAA, is that right? You'd be,
You could go from AA to AAA, yes, the bond rating
There's some
agencies
pluses on
thought. Yeah, yeah. I'm going to correct that by saying the last bond rating we had was A2. We do not currently have a rating.
Okay.
But you'd be hoping to get the next higher level, which would be AAA.
No, it would be, well, if we use our last bond rating as the guide, it could be AA2, it could be AA1.
Oh, I see.
So there are different
Steps.
levels. There are different levels within the bond rating itself.
Within AA, okay, thank you.
Questions on page 3? Andy?
On 4, is that okay?
Page 4.
Yeah.
Page 4.
It's just about the police and fire. We're seeing more overtime and an increase in the overtime budget. But I felt like last year they said they were pretty well staffed and had finally filled their roster. So how did we end up with more overtime and planning for more overtime next year? Are we already looking towards needing more staff at the police department?
So
That's what we'll be asking them about.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'm not on that subcommittee, so maybe can you just ask for me?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
So I can give you a little.
Duly noted.
I can give you a little precursor if I could.
Sure.
Laura and I from my office worked with the chiefs again this year to sort of suss out where they need to be with their overtime. It's been a couple year process because we didn't quite honestly get it right this year. In addition, they are seeing greater training requirements that's requiring them to put people in place of bodies who are going out training. And also when they bring new people on, they've got to have someone either with that person or replacing. So there's lots of that going on. So having spent a couple sessions with them, I think it's an honest assessment of what they need. But they will talk to you at length about it, and I would encourage a conversation there. And I've coached them that they will probably get the question. So,
And I can add to that too. We've had a few long-term injuries, so if someone's out on workers' comp, we have to backfill with overtime. So that's not due to a mistake in budgeting. It's an injury or something like that. So both departments have had one or two long-term injuries.
I have also pressed them each year that as their numbers have increased, it can be tempting for any firefighter EMT to think it's okay to take a day off because there's sufficient staff to cover a shift. So we try to balance those interests out and just, warn them that there's a certain culture that we hope that they're not encouraging.
Yeah, so the number of people that could be off on one shift is oftentimes determined by their contract.
and just to clarify, I was speaking about the police in general, about their training, and also when you do talk to them, yeah, that's the group.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Fran?
Oh, no, my hand's not up.
Oh. Just holding your glasses. I feel it. I feel you. Page 5? 6? 7?
I have one on 6.
Go for it.
So the lighting, we're coming off because we finally paid off the lighting contract. I mean, I'm one that walks the streets at night occasionally here in Exeter, and I feel like lighting could definitely be
improved.
So, yeah.
So adding streetlights?
Yeah. I mean, I
Or lumens, at least.
talk to people
Turn the
in
rheostat
past
up.
about it. We're happy with our street lights now, but
Rheostat.
I think there's some areas of improvement there. And if we're gonna, instead of taking the decrease, maybe we reevaluate if there's opportunities for more streetlights in the town.
Good. It's good for discussion in the DPW. The DPW discussion.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a question that's maybe out of line, so please put me back in my place. But a number of years ago, there were two projects that seemed to be big, and I don't see any evidence of them in the budget anywhere. One of them had to do with the parking study, and the other has to do with putting in roundabouts in some critical places. Have they died?
So, no, the downtown parking and pedestrian study is very
Never
much
done.
alive, and will be discussed actually at the October 15th Select Board meeting. And it has actually already been discussed with them once, but there are several recommendations that the consultant who performed that work is recommending, and they have to be digested and decided upon by the board as to how they want to go with that. So that's that. And then the roundabout is actually under design, and we are working with PEA on an easement right now, which they have said that they will give us.
Which one?
And
Which roundabout? Because there were several that were prioritized.
Just one, in front of the Exeter Inn.
Yeah.
The other
Linden
one was,
Street.
That one's bad.
Yeah, the other one was not a roundabout.
So we are working with them right now on finalizing that. Once we are able to finalize that, we can put that piece to bed for the interim while we go through the process of the $250,000 for this year, and hopefully get those funds approved to be able to do the drainage and the sewer improvements. So we'll package that together and then do the project at one time.
And you can expect next year, we're going to see more.
That's the hope.
Yeah, I think that was in here. Or maybe it was in the book. Anything else?
Right here, Nitwit.
Are we on page 7 still?
All right.
Trying to overlook you.
He's tired.
Trying to overlook you. Go ahead, if you must.
You put me here. Yeah, I was just thinking, as like some of these questions are coming up, they seem very much directed like towards a subcommittee. So I think that like maybe whether the phrase is, this is a question I'd like the subcommittee to look into,
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
to follow up with that department instead of like asking people today to answer
Yeah.
questions about something that's going to be discussed later. So, can the fire subcommittee talk about overtime or look into overtime and then just kind of let it go with that? That's all right, if that makes sense, unless something's obvious, there's an obvious answer laying here right now. Because that's really the subcommittee's work, but I think it's great to have that chance to say, when the subcommittee
know
meets, can they, dive into that for me? So, and it's a good time for subcommittee to take notes on that, so.
Yeah, highlighting the police and fire for Judy to talk about, that was a great idea. But you're right, Chris is right, we don't need to do a deep dive right now.
Well, we don't have the answers, if they haven't met yet.
Todd?
Are we on page 7?
Sure.
Yes, along those lines, and in that line of thought, don't answer this question, but I'll be interested in understanding how direct rent relief in this town maybe compares to other towns, and how that's handled, how those decisions are made. So don't answer that, but that's what I'll be interested in hearing
Great.
about in the future.
Would that be you, Anna?
Yes, with my question on page 7.
Sure.
That's me.
Or that you'll be
Taking notes on that.
addressing the rent relief stuff?
Oh.
Maybe? On to your question.
We'll ask.
What is your
We
question?
will ask. Just confirming, Welfare and Human Services, because the general government has historically worked with the town manager and the assistant town manager and Pam McElroy, but we also have a human services
Right.
budget. So,
Yeah, Chris indicated
Which-
they just do the list,
okay,
and that you would do the staff. So,
got it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, we
Wanted to
finally
confirm.
figured that out. We realized that Pam pointed out to us that she was meeting with you to go over her budget, and then she was meeting with us to go over her budget.
Yeah.
And so yes, what we do and what we will do on our night is simply go over the human services funding, which I know it's just,
Yeah.
they can't say grants, but it's where we give out funding to nonprofits. So that's the only thing that we discuss on our night.
Great. Page 8. Page 9. Ten. Just for everyone's edification, as the chair of the DPW General, I I and my committee will be doing a deep dive into some of the bond articles that are listed here. If you had questions on them, I do as well.
I have a question, it's not super specific. So the fuel island, did we get any letters or anything from the facilities committee about their opinion on that? To you or to?
I
Usually
don't
they
believe
CC.
I don't believe we have received a letter from them on that. No.
Or any communication
Not-
or
not yet.
recommendations?
No,
Okay.
not as of yet.
On any of these on, just generally speaking, are there any committee recommendations on anything that we would be able to?
Well, you mean the River Advisory Committee with respect to Pickpocket Dam?
I just mean in general, because the only one I know about is facilities.
I think Dave did present the CIP plan, whether or not they were the ones we picked out for this round, right? I mean, he brought, I'm almost positive he brought that to facilities, but we will double check.
Okay. Yeah, it would just be helpful when we discuss.
Yeah,
if
we'll
there's
be
any
meeting in a couple of
relevant
weeks.
Any committee
So if they had some
recommendations that are out
feedback,
there?
that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, we'll follow up on that. Thanks.
Chris?
Just kind of confused, because we've got it listed warrant articles, capital improvement program, and other. So what would the Sportsman's Club cleanup be under?
So that is standing alone as sort of a unique article.
Okay.
That's the best way to describe it. It's
Okay.
it's a mandate. It's coming through
Yeah.
PBS to the town.
Right.
Is this lead remediation
It is to do site assessment testing. So
related to lead?
related to lead. and
Okay.
the remedial action plan that's on file with DES to do follow-up testing on site and so forth, and remediate if needed. But again, it's one of those articles that doesn't really fit in
Yeah.
to the broad budget per se, so it has to stand alone on its own. So that's why it is carved out.
You mean standalone, so the town's not voting on it?
Well, we didn't know.
Because I know it's mandatory. We don't have a choice. It has to be done.
In this format, the town would vote on it, yeah. It would be a warrant article that the town would vote on.
But we
Because
have to do
didn't-
it.
We didn't put it in the budget.
Doesn't exist anymore?
Do you see where I'm saying, where my confusion's coming from, though? Because we have to do it.
Doesn't get voted in. and
But what if it gets voted down?
Yeah. Why would we vote on something we don't have a choice in, you know? It's kind of like me asking my kids, hey, where do you want to, you know? And then it's like, they don't really have a vote, you know, at a certain age.
Well, we
It's
would,
like, it's
we would
just-
have to work with DES on an alternative at that point.
Oh.
Why would somebody not vote against? How can somebody make a good vote on that, not knowing what the consequences are of voting it down?
Well, that'll be discussed, on this committee, so that information will be there. If they choose to.
The alternatives will be there when the warrant article is presented to the
Yes.
public?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the subcommittee will be discussing that.
Which subcommittee?
Probably Public
and
Works
ammo.
General, I would guess.
Whatever you're doing.
That's your responsibility. You're the
You asked,
subcommittee.
you poked your head up.
Judy, you're on page 11, right?
Page 11, yes. Who's involved in succession planning? I mean, is somebody going to be, I mean, what does this refer to?
So as part of the Keegan report that Russ mentioned, the management report, one part was looking at the structure of our operations. Another part was looking at how we would plan to succession many of our aging staff, of which we have some. So
Russ.
I'm just
Kidding. I didn't say that.
So, in public, we're not as nimble as the private sector. So one of the things we discussed was, how do we plan for a 2 or 3 person department that's about to lose someone very valuable, and not knowing well ahead of time in a budget cycle and everything else that goes into the way, the cadence of the way the town works. How do we make sure we have that kind of flexibility
I
to
see.
say, take my department, if I were to lose my number 2, that would be devastating. I would need her to be around to help me train someone in. But we may have already voted on a budget that wouldn't allow me to do that. So if we were to start a succession planning fund that would allow us from time to time to tap into funds and allow a person to stay on part-time while bringing a new person on, that might be helpful to the town in its operations.
We just had a nice example of this in the fire department with a nice orderly transition with the elder statesman being around in a part-time role to assist with.
And I would even say in a department like that, it's not that it was easy to do by any means. Justin's done a lot of work to get where he is, but when you have multiple people and a bench of people in your department, that's easier. In a department like building or planning or finance or HR, it gets infinitely harder to do that flexibly and to keep services moving, efficiently. So it was an idea.
For example, if we have a department head and an administrative assistant, that administrative assistant may not be qualified to become the department head. There's no succession plan there because the department is only 2 people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it allows for some flexibility that the town still runs effectively and efficiently. In order for us to know in advance in the budget, we'd have to know 16 months in advance. Right? So our employees may not tell us, although we ask really nicely in an HR professional way, to tell us if they're going to retire or move on, but they're not required to. So that can be very difficult for us sometimes.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
So in the interest of clarification, by CIP night, it'd probably be worthwhile to have a slightly better write-up, or maybe the template of a warrant article that we could chew on. Because I think it's a great question, and the write-up on page 21, doesn't convey what you just said. And so a clearer description would probably, knock it out of the park. We should have that clear.
Remember what I said and write it down?
Yeah.
Rewind the tape.
Go to the video.
Yeah, I'll definitely have some questions.
Amanda's doing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, but it needs to be articulated.
And this fund
Well-
wouldn't get used if we don't have, this is to start the fund, right? So if someone doesn't retire in a year, we're not, going to keep refunding. It's when it needs to be used so that we have access.
Any other questions on 11?
I just want to make an observation about that very thing then, because I think right off the bat, still talking about the succession plan fund. Is this about a succession plan, or is this a succession fund? Because
Well, I think we'll talk about that in more detail.
Or are we funding succession, right? And, I'm thinking, for example, about the water department last year. We had a robust conversation about that, about exactly that issue. And there was a difference of opinions on how to handle that.
Yeah.
So a skeptical person might look at a fund such as this with just that, a skeptical eye. I'm just
Well,
gonna
there
throw
will be
that out.
skeptical people, which is why I think it should be written out. And it'll be discussed on CIP night, and I think it's good
We'll put more-
to bring it to their attention.
Yeah.
We'll put more guardrails on this one.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think so, thanks.
Tom?
Is the Sportsman Club defunct?
I don't think so.
No, they're,
They're sort of like trilobites, they'll last for
Then why do we
millions
pay
and millions of
why is it our responsibility for the town?
Don, you're just stepping into the pool here.
I'm gonna take that offline.
Poke the hornet's nest.
We-
You might want to have
Thank you, Don.
with somebody
This
else.
is an age-old question.
Same question.
so we,
Do we chart, but it's gated.
right.
Yeah.
We own the property. The town owns the property, and the town was the one who originally allowed, and it goes
Well,
back to.
that's okay.
Goes back to the 50s, someone to go over there and shoot lead onto the property. So as the property owner, we have some culpability with respect to the site.
But we could charge.
What's the rent?
The rent,
All right.
the rent is not,
And part of the problem is it's right next to one of our water supplies.
Yeah, exactly.
$12 a
You know,
year
it's-
is the rent.
Yeah, it's complicated. I'll talk to you off the grid.
I can imagine a local supply side sponsor that might be able to help us with that. Maybe they can
Yeah.
step up.
Perhaps.
You have a few of those.
Yeah.
Oh, the virtues of having somebody from outside come join us.
That's right.
I love it.
Oops.
Oops. It won't be your last. I just had a clarification on the general fund appropriations, and thank you for, on page 12,
Yeah.
putting together the list that would make up what we would take out of fund balance to offset some of the warrant articles. But then, back on page 11, on the top slide, you talk about funding sources, total general fund, $300,000. Is that different than what's described on page 12, or is that a?
No, it's a cumulative, the warrant articles is a cumulative number between the general fund, $300,000, and then the total payment impacts on the lease purchase proposals. So adding those two figures together to get.
So it'd be 459 and change plus 300 will come from the general fund to offset warrant articles.
So general fund is 300.
Right.
Plus another 109,250, that's on page 11. And then as you roll over to page 12, that 409,250 is shown as FY '25 warrant articles, non-fund balance general fund. So the fund balance warrant articles are separate from that.
Got it.
Okay.
Can someone summarize?
Actually, I don't have it.
I don't have it either.
Summarize the difference between the funds, is that what you're looking for?
Well, what I'm looking for is what the total number is coming out of the fund balance to offset warrant articles. So I originally thought it was 300, then I went to page 12 and it says 459, 170. Are those the same, is it the same pot for the same things, or, I just want to clarify, that's all. I mean, I get the sewer fund, and I get the excess bond proceeds.
Adding along, I'm not sure I get
Yeah.
where.
It sounds like you want
So
total expenditure.
the total fund balance amount on the slide to offset warrant articles is 284,170.
On which slide?
The slide on page 12 at the top.
You're thinking how much?
So the 459 will get a 254 offset from the fund balance.
The 459 is the total amount of appropriations on the slide that is slated to come from fund balance.
Okay.
Two of those are customary articles, the snow and ice deficit fund and the sick leave trust fund. The rest are the items on that list.
Right.
And those you say total 285, 170?
284, 170.
Oh, 284, 170, you got it. Yeah, okay.
But doesn't that slide speak to the fact that all of those will be paid for out of fund balance?
Correct.
459, 170.
Correct.
So then what is the 300 on slide 11, top, or page 11, top slide? What does that refer to?
General fund taxation.
So those will be a tax item, just like the bottom line operating budget will be a tax item.
Okay, so it's not really a funding source. Well, okay, so it's part of the tax rate. Okay, so it's not being taken out on a fund balance.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Those
It
are
said
all
funding
anticipated.
sources and then total general fund. I sort of
Yeah, I understood.
Yeah.
mixed the
Got it.
descriptions. Got it. So it's not out of fund balance.
Is when we're using
Not
prior
fund
year
balance, I
dollars.
get it, yeah. It's
Put it in
general
a little
fund.
better
Thank you.
We'll improve that for you.
We'll put it in a chart, like a one-page chart for you, so you can see where the funding sources are coming from, and make it a little easier.
And lots of pictures and simple things for us, yeah. Just
I know. We'll make it a little easier.
And cookies would be helpful.
That was Christine's department.
One more, Mr. Chair, one more quick question
Sure.
on page 12, bottom
I
line.
knew somebody was going to.
37 cents per 1,000 assessed valuation, that's based on current tax rate.
Yeah, that was my question
Yeah, I
as
had
well.
that too.
No, we did our analysis based on what we're projecting to be the future
Oh, really?
value.
Oh, that's
Yes.
projected,
Wow.
truly an estimated projected?
Right, Russ, I've got that right?
Yeah.
We looked at.
Okay.
And that's still a prelim number, because we don't even have a final number.
Right,
yet.
so it's very prelim,
Yeah.
okay. Because I intuitively
Well,
realized
yeah, I
if you
had
base
the-
it on
I had the
on
same
current
question.
rates, it's
That's
gonna be
cool.
totally different.
Another thing on page 12,
Yeah.
who gets to dig into the details of the warrant articles fund balance? And the reason I ask is the public EV charging facility. The very top of mind concern with that is it feels like it's addressing a small demographic.
Well, we'll be talking about that during CIP.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah,
So
yeah, that's one of those, thanks for bringing it up, but yeah, we'll be talking about it in November
Okay.
as a full committee.
Yeah, as far as funding sources go, these are recommendations that are coming to you in this format, but the Budget Recommendations Committee always has a robust conversation about funding sources and where things should come from, so.
That will be somewhere, and I haven't looked to see what department that's under, but whoever's the subcommittee on that will scrub that, and then we'll talk about it as an overall.
Okay, so whoever picks it up, I have a comment. When it gets
It'll be
picked up, I have a comment.
Yeah,
Probably in
It's been a great night.
Anybody listening to me?
the
It's under
AK tab,
Conservation and sustainability.
which would be general government.
Kristen Murphy.
Kristen.
Excellent, and nobody better than Anna to
Literally.
talk about that.
Bob, if I
Great.
could, just to round out the conversation on CIP items and their funding sources.
Great.
When we talk about from excess bond proceeds, if we're not going to fund a project, I'm going to keep paying down the debt on.
Sure.
On those projects with the fund.
Oh, yeah,
with
yeah.
With the excess
Yeah.
fund. So it's either we apply it to some project that is sort of
Excellent.
like what it came from originally, or
Or you
we
pay it
pay down
down.
debt service.
Bob,
Excellent. Judy?
are we going to have any presentation on the budget, on the income side? Any expected,
Yeah, that's next, the review of the
Revenue or-
24 year-to-date, and where we are on
I
that.
didn't know if you were winding up.
I'm not.
Okay.
Anybody can go at any time.
We're free to
Just
leave.
checking.
You're free to leave. You're always free to leave.
I thought that was just me.
Anything
from
on
you.
13? And the only, on anybody 14? So just a couple clarifications. I know in the past, we've had, especially the last few years, there've always been a list of deferrals. It looks like there are no deferrals this year.
There are no deferrals on this list.
However,
Were there pre-deferrals?
yeah,
But-
there you go.
That you just didn't want to?
Well, we again, when we talked about the operating budget, we talked about $210,000 of reductions. So those have definitely been
Okay.
removed from the
When
from
we
the
had
budget.
our department head CIP meeting in preparation, it started with, let's not do that unless it's an emergency. So I think there was some direct.
So rather than have them ask and then say no, just say, yeah, don't even, we'll talk about it next.
The
Great.
departments, the departments
figured
have
that
been
that was
very
the
good at deferring, sort of self-deferring some things, and letting we had, as Melissa pointed out, we had a very inclusive CIP discussion, a robust discussion with the department heads, and got agreement from everybody that these were the top priorities that they foresaw, or that they saw.
Yeah, it was a nice process this year. We wanted to let everybody see rather than fight each other. Not
Yeah,
that I'm sort of
sounds like it.
joking, excuse me, but, and it also allowed them to hear what's coming up in the departments and how that fit and what the priority was and whether it was an emergency for one department or the next. So, but truth be told, with the public safety building being voted in last year, we said,
Right.
really, unless it's,
Yeah.
an emergency, please.
Mission critical.
Please consider another year. So that's where we started.
Okay,
And-
Bob, just one more question.
Is it a good one?
Yeah.
Because I have a good one as the
Yeah.
last one. But if you have a good one, go ahead. You can be,
Just, we have two new subcommittee members, and I just want to be really clear about the EMS fund, what it involves and how we utilize it, because I know members of that department would love to have 100% for themselves, out of which they pay their expenses and so forth. So the EMS fund is generated by income from ambulance, and it goes into this EMS fund, and out of it you pay EMS-related expenses upfront,
A portion of them.
a portion of them. So not salary,
There's only one full-time wage attributable to the EMS fund, and that's the dispatcher.
okay.
And I think last year we moved more overtime into that.
Well, that would be part of your subcommittee's review, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure we all understand what the fund is, is you don't know
Again,
what
I
it
think
is.
as part of your presentation, that would be a great education for all of us.
But we may not understand what it is, so I'm just trying to clarify what it is.
So you've got 3 weeks to do that.
So we
Figure it out.
So we have
And keep it, make it real easy for us to understand.
we have a line item budget for the EMS fund, which we'll be happy to supply.
I think the
as part of the
details, yeah, would
process.
be helpful. Judy touches on a great point.
Yeah.
You know, we-
I agree, because I had a question about that, Mr. Chair, too, that, exactly that, what is that fund spent on? Because I think it was raised last year. Could it fund 2 positions for dispatchers? I don't know.
Oh, let's find that out.
That way,
3
can we
weeks.
find out?
Yes.
Yes, is my question. You said already, 90, whatever the residual is, 95% of that goes to the
General
general
fund,
fund, which is
right.
great. So it still offsets other expenses, but it would be nice to have that breakdown.
And who controls the spend?
For
and all
everybody's
those other things.
clarification,
So
it's worth having a.
More details on exactly how it's funded and how it's allocated and all that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Great.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you very much, and I do believe it was an excellent question.
I thought it was superb.
Judy,
Much better than mine.
that was rich.
It was a great question.
So my last question is, you had mentioned there was a pretty good fund balance of around 5.2 million. I'm assuming that does not include water and sewer, because I know we don't have actual separate.
That's general.
It's funds on
general
paper,
fund.
but not in the bank.
That is general fund balance.
That's just general fund. Got it.
That was a real ringer.
Just trying to find out. Okay, so could you give us a, Nico? Sure.
Within line with what we were last year.
It's good to find it out from the town.
So I appreciated I'm going to go back to the CBA for a minute, on page 1. I really appreciated the valid questions that were asked because they were really good questions. And I also appreciated how the executive team tried to answer the question without compromising the confidentiality of negotiations, which are still underway. But what I want you to take away, because I know there were a lot of questions and a lot of answers, is that the timeline remains consistent from years past. So there's been no change in the timeline of when these contracts are negotiated. And as Mr. Dean and Ms. Roy said, typically there are 2 contracts that are up each year. This year would be fire and public works. It was the town that took the initiative to reopen the police. It wasn't the police. So I just want everybody to understand that the town chose to reopen the police contract for multiple reasons. And I think they addressed that. So I wanted to be clear on
Great.
that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, could you give us a brief recap on where we are, FY '24, expenses as well as budget, revenues?
Yeah, on that, I'm going to turn it over to Corey. He's got that information for you.
Sure, and I promise to keep it quick, Chris.
Hey, I'm cool.
So I have results through August 31st, which, if we spent our budget ratably, would be 67% of the budget. So you can kind of keep that number or percentage in your mind as you hear the results. So for general fund, it's a $22.8 million budget last year, or this year. Our year-to-date spending is 15.8 million, or 69%. Slightly ahead of last year, 2023, which was 66%. And what we're generally seeing is that the budget lines that are lagging pertain to wages and benefits. We still have a number of departments, our big guys, DPW in particular, that are suffering from open positions that they're trying to fill. Police and fire have had turnover, but have generally been fully staffed. In general government, town clerk and HR both were slow to get positions filled this year, so we had some unspent budget lines there. And again, DPW is where the lion's share of those open positions are. The new DPW director is doing an excellent and aggressive job of trying to hire, and has had some success, so that's good. But the results of the budget year to date reflect having those positions open. On the revenue side, so if you think of sort of 2 buckets of revenue for the general fund, we have taxation, which is the lion's share, and then you have sort of our miscellaneous revenue, motor vehicle, building inspections, our meals and rooms tax, all of that. That comes to about $7.3 million that we collect. And everything we collect there helps us just keep the tax rate low and smooth the tax rate. So when we have a good year on our miscellaneous revenues, we have more flexibility on, working on that tax rate. So as of 8/31, we'd collected 73% of our miscellaneous revenue, taking out the timing of things like meals and room and the EMS turnback, which don't up to the end of the year. A couple of notable categories: interest income, $300,000 budget, and we've earned $465,000 so far year to date. It's been a good climate for earning on your money, not a great climate for going and borrowing, and we're taking advantage of that. Building permits are down considerably from the year before, but all of our miscellaneous revenue lines are generally in line with what we need to see to end the year at our projection. Water fund, $4.9 million budget. Year-to-date spend is $3.7 million, or 75%. Over that 67%, but all of our debt service payments happen in the summer, so the lion's share of our budget gets spent by mid-year, or by the end of the summer, I should say. Debt service is about 33% of that budget. Nothing notable on the revenue side. Sewer budget, $7.49 million budget. We've only spent $2.6 million of that, or 34%. In contrast to water, all of our sewer debt gets spent at the end of the year. That budget is 56%, our debt service for sewers. So as you can see, most of our spending happens in the latter part of the year. Revenue highlights for sewer. We are anticipating our septic receiving program to come back online for 2026. That's where we receive septage and process it from other communities. It has started to be a moneymaker for us, but we had to do some retooling, and we'll be back online with that hopefully in 26. And we continue to fortunately receive state aid grant, or SAG money, to offset our large wastewater treatment plant debt. So this year we got $1.08 million, and next year we're anticipating 1.06. So that's a healthy turn back from the state to us.
That wasn't really anticipated in 17, was it?
It was.
That we were going to get that?
That predates me, but I think there was a pause.
Yeah, there was a pause in the program.
On the state aid grant?
Yeah, there was a question, wasn't there, about how much of that would actually happen? Or was that always baked in?
No, it was very much in flux with the legislature.
That's what I thought.
And the town lobbied very, very heavily to
Right.
make sure that the wastewater facility was included on the list. And at the end of that process, it was included. So once it gets funded and on the list and funded, it typically stays funded for the duration of the bond.
It does need to be renewed every 2 years.
It does.
With the budget.
That
So
is true.
If we get everything, we'll get about $18 million out of the $54 million that the project thereabout cost.
Yeah, Corey's correct in that the legislature could suspend it. It's possible. It happened back in 2008. So, but we are certainly counting on the money being there.
Okay. Anything else? Cool? Good. Thank you. Any questions, Judy?
Any word on federal infrastructure money?
Any additional federal money?
Additional funds? Not at this point.
No, one of our projects is the sweeper, which is an SRF loan, but that's state revolving. And I know that we're looking for, once the solar array is online, some reimbursement for that, but that was part of last year's budget.
Right.
Yeah. And for anybody that's new on the committee, just a reminder that although our fiscal year starts in January, our budget doesn't get approved till March, so there are a lot of departments that won't start spending besides things that have to be spent. So sometimes when the budget books come out and it says, only spent through 6/30, they've really only had a few months where they felt comfortable knowing if the budget passed or if we went to default. So just for anybody that's new.
And where are we with the TIF and that money coming back into general fund?
We were just talking about that today.
So we have about
Yeah, so we have a balance in the TIF fund. Corey's,
5.8.
yeah, I was going to say 6 million. In the TIF fund, we're still in process with the TIF. We're not sunsetting it yet. We do have some considerations out there that we're dealing with, including the TIF road issue, which we're trying to get resolved, but has not been resolved as of yet. So we'll continue to work on that and see how that goes.
So not this budget year, but perhaps next?
There may be more to report next year on that.
Okay.
More to come.
More to come on that.
All right, home stretch. So just to recap the process that we went over in August. We have our subcommittees set. I think I got Amanda on most every subcommittee. And if there are any questions or I missed something, certainly feel free to reach out. But subcommittee chairs will be in touch if they haven't already to set up meetings. And we'll be doing that most of October. Our next meeting as a full committee is in 2.5 weeks. Friday, October 18th. It's slated as a full-day meeting. Starts at 8:30. We're usually actually done by lunch because we are brutally efficient. But certainly plan for early afternoon to be with us if you can. And then the other meetings are in the evening. Any questions? I remember we went through a thing, there was some staffing issues between Public Works and Police and Fire. And we switched the meetings. Is that still correct? Do you remember that?
Yeah, we present October 30th.
Okay. We did change that around because Police and Fire used to be before Public Works.
Yeah, thank God you moved it.
Okay. Because you're away. Or you're.
No.
I knew there was something. I just wanted to make sure that the schedule was still.
Yep.
Okay, great. And we're still looking at meeting in the library on November 12th?
Yes.
Because of Veterans Day and the Select Board meeting? Great. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Can I, get Fran?
I'm just trying to get up to speed. I know that the meetings have to be posted publicly. What's the procedure for getting on the calendar?
The chair will take care of the posting and communicate with everybody. So, yeah, in your case, I'll be reaching out and do a group email to the department head and all of that.
But how do you get, I'm just curious, how do you get on the calendar? Who do you go to?
Pam is
Post
doing
meeting?
Well, usually it's you talk to the department head along with, and you just pick dates. You just see what's people are available.
Comes through the town manager's office? Is that the?
Pam.
Yeah.
Oh, how do
That
we,
answers the question.
yes,
Okay. Pam
we
does it.
communicate with Pam.
Pam does it.
Yes, she does it, yeah, we don't have
Pam
to.
is in charge of everything.
Corey? Sorry?
I was just going to make one more plug as you start to do your research and all for the Keegan report, the management report. If nothing else on the website, taking a look at the executive summary and then towards the back, the opportunities for operational improvements, it kind of enlightens their thoughts on what we've implemented essentially around the restructuring of really lines of communication and who's reporting to who.
Can I ask a question? This goes back to succession, but I understand that it's an executive team project, but is this project owned by one department, say HR or town manager?
The Keegan report?
No, the succession planning.
It's really owned by us here.
Okay.
Yeah, the three of us as the.
Organizational question, because
It's actually
succession.
put forth by the select board owns it.
Okay.
Doing the work, and it's an active, it's a very active document. It's,
Yeah.
according to Mr. Sharkey, it's our Bible for survival.
That's what I wanted to know, is who's at the helm?
I would really encourage you, it's a long report, but if you read the beginning and the end, it will make a lot of sense.
Thank you.
And I think that's an appropriate question for Mena, because the way we do CIP and warrant articles is that each department or subcommittee, sort of touches on what their warrant articles are. We don't discuss them at length, but when they present, so when Anna presents on that Friday, we would want to touch on this, so. she would need to be up to speed on what exactly that is,
Two, and then you,
Yes.
so she can explain it to us.
yeah,
And if she can't explain it, Amanda can.
Okay.
yeah.
So again, it just,
Amanda, I'm going to defer to Amanda on that.
yeah. That's our default.
Now, I have to leave first.
So the subcommittee chairs,
Free to
again,
leave at any time, man.
in your reports, just make sure you, again, describe what the warrant articles are and CIP items. Again, we're not going to discuss them at length, but just, we'd like to see hear what your opinions are in general, and then we'll discuss them more in detail on CIP night.
In our final report, do you want the usual narrative that goes along with the spreadsheet? Or?
I mean, it's what you're comfortable with. I mean, I prefer more of a bullet point, but it's whatever you're comfortable with writing. It can be narrative, bullet, however you want to present it.
Okay.
I mean, just enough to get the information across over and above what is in the budget. So whatever you feel comfortable with writing is fine.
Thank you.
And Ton will ask you questions anyway, and Amanda will answer them.
I just let Ton ask all the questions.
Okay, any other questions before the committee? No. We will adjourn until Friday, October 18th. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
See you on the 18th?
I have something very important to say. Tomorrow
Okay.
is Judy's birthday.
Oh, it is. It is.
I think we should sing her happy
And my
birthday.
work is done.
Did you just remember
I think
that?
we should.
No
singing.
Anyone who wants to give gifts, I appreciate your generosity. Jewelry is always acceptable. Money is tacky, but welcome.
But accepted.
I know what line.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.